everybody, it's me, Laura, and I'm back today with another steampunk edition, and I haven't done one of these in a while. So today it's pipes and plates, and we're going to start right away with my tile and my clay that has been rolled out on a number 4 setting. And this little piece of cardboard here is just my guide to make a 4 by 4 inch square to build my entire picture piece off of. And even though you don't see it here, this cardboard is actually a piece of, it was a piece of my cereal box, right? I just thought, cut it down. It's a perfect guide into a 4 inch piece, and I love it. Anyways, I'm taking out as many of my little bubbles here. Once in a while this happens. I'm burnishing it back up, but this is going to be my foundation for my entire piece. Once I have that all taken care of and I've got all my edges good, I'm going to bring in another piece of clay. And this clay is going to be also, again, run through your pasta machine on a number 4 setting and placed right over the other square you had just cut. Now, as you're doing this, I'm trying to get as much air out of between the 2 layers as possible, but I'm not pressing down a whole ton. I'm also going to be running my finger along the edge on all 4 sides. This will give me an idea where that 4 by 4 inch square is, and then eventually I'll bring in my blade and I'll start cutting the edges as close as I can to the edge on where I have run my finger and I see that little line to cut it. I'm now going to start creating the plate features on this particular square, and I brought in another bit of clay here. This was rolled out again on that number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine, and I'm just cutting out random kind of sizes of rectangles and squares, whatever looks good to me. This is truly, this is why I'm not measuring here. I want you guys to like, okay, well, I like the size of this, or I don't like this, okay, whatever works for you, and then start placing these down onto that 4 by 4 square that you had created. Now, when you get this down, I'm coming in here, and when I cut this, I'm going to cut some of these pieces off at the edge, like I did here, so it's going to conform around that square, but other pieces I'm going to cut down, and I'm going to just cut away from the overall 4 by 4 square, just a little ways from it. I wanted to give a little bit of a different kind of dimension on the plates because I thought I want to emphasize them a little bit, and so that's why I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, let's give it a little bit coming off of the original square here, maybe on the one side. So on this side it looks good, right? I've got that going, but I'm like, maybe I'll take a little bit off, but then I'll form up that edge, but then maybe come in here and yeah, I'm not gonna go ahead and cut right up to the edge. I'm gonna leave a little bit hanging off of there. And I really love that look. There's something about it. I just love how it looks, right? Now, when I do this too, I like to use my needle tool quite a bit to make sure I can or I should say define that small little edge where the 2 plates meet up to each other. And then I'm gonna bring in some smaller pieces and start creating more and more of these plates. Once I got my plates down, or the strips that I liked, I'm going to bring in some small little tiny balls and I'm going to start pushing them down onto my first plate, and it's going to create this little tiny circle. And I decided, I want some of my little tiny balls to either be a little bit big, and then some are going to be a little bit smaller, and so on. I decided to add in another plate. I was like, one more. One more or something like that. Anyway, and this is a thing. When you're sculpting these things, maybe you'll say, I like that, but maybe I want to add in a little bit more, so add in where you want. This is really purely, it's like a free-form sculpt here, guys. This is just whatever you like, right? So when you create these plates, it's just a matter of like, let's add one in here, one in there. Whatever looks good to your eye, go with that. And then I'm just taking in those little tiny balls, creating my little flat dots, if you will, onto these plates that we're creating. And I'm going to do this throughout the entire piece. Now, once I start putting down my little flattened dots on each of these little plates, you might want to come in every once in a while, and I'm bringing my needle tool and I'm just creating another line on one of those plates. Almost like you've got two plates joined up. So if you have one piece that looks just a little bit too big to you and you're like, let's make this into another section, you can do that. So even right here, like on this larger square down here, I thought, yeah, let's go ahead and do that down there as well. And this way then it creates a little more interest to the eye. And you can also add in more of your little dots, which are eventually going to turn into our little, you might say, screws that will go, or rivets that will go into the plates themselves. Now, mind you, I used, I want to say, I have my plus and my minus screwdrivers. I always want to say my cross and my, but say, no, plus and minus. Apparently that's the way to approach this. Anyways, plus and minus screwdrivers. And I really went with my plus one a lot. I like that one. To me, it's more dynamic. And so I have these little tiny screwdrivers. I went to my dollar store and I found this set. Apparently I went there the other day and they didn't have it. So if you have to, go look online. I will try to find a little miniature screwdriver set that you could get online, and I'll try and put that in the description area on this video. But when it comes to just the single line, like I said, I've got my screwdrivers, but this is where my little dots were a little bit wide. So guess what I did? I brought in my X-Acto knife, and that works. Or you could use your needle tool, but the X-Acto knife is kind of nice because you go right across it. The nice thing with the needle tool, though, is you can go right across it, and then you can come back, and if you have to, even with like your blade here, like I'm doing here, I like to push it in just a little bit, and possibly use the needle tool to kind of make sure that screw head look goes right around, like you're just kind of indenting it on the side. So I will do that as well, and you can see right there, it just kind of finishes up really nice. And then push it, if you can, together. Push the two sides together, because it looks a little wide, so I use my fingers. Just push it together. Perfect. So once I got all of my little screws and my plus and minuses done, I came in with my knitting needle because I thought I really want this to look like plates that have like a rivet kind of look to them. So it's really just a single dot. So that's what I'm doing on each of these little plates. And it really finished up for me a nice plate look. It just so worked for me. I thought, okay, a very simple thing, but sometimes that's all you need, is just a very simple kind of thing to make it look exactly like what it's supposed to be. I want to say, I have a new saying now. I don't like to say stupid, so instead I say, keep it simple, silly. I'm like, that might work really good, right? Anyways, from there, I'm rolling out, and this is where I really start to bring in the pipes. This is my first pipe. So I'm rolling out a nice long piece of clay, and you guys are probably wondering too, why is she using red? I had extra red. This is my scrap mud clay for right now, okay? Once in a while, I'll just get an overwhelming amount of one color, and I'm like, okay, that's going to be my mud, and I go with that. But anyway, I'm starting to create and form my pipes here. So if you want to, you can also use your Sculpey clay gun, or any kind of clay gun that you have that's just a nice smaller circle type thing, and you can pump out a big long piece, and that can become your pipe. Notice I did a nice right angle at this, and we're going to use that in the piece. It's my nice three-dimensional, my first pipe that I'm putting in. And then I'm taking a little bit of flattened clay here. It was rolled out again on a number 4 setting, making a small little thin rectangular piece, and then you're going to place that right over the pipe. Use your X-Acto knife and your needle tool to kind of adhere that around this pipe. So it looks like it's being fastened in, or it was, you might say it was either riveted in or attached in to keep the pipe along onto this particular piece of whatever machinery we're doing here. Now, once I got this particular pipe laid down, and I was thinking about it, and I thought, sometimes people have a hard time trying to just roll out a nice log of clay, right? So from here, what I did was I went ahead and ran this particular piece of polymer clay through on a number 4 setting, and I thought, why not just roll it up, you know, a nice long piece of it, and then I could cut it where I wanted at, like as to how thick or like how big or how small I wanted it. So I wanted this pretty big, and so I thought, okay, yeah, this will work. Cut the ends off, and you know, you might have to roll it a little bit just to get the edge off on the one side. You could even score it if you want to, but it was a nice, this is my nice big pipe. And this particular pipe, I thought, let's go ahead and cut it in half. I wanted a little bit of a shorter piece, but then from here, because he was so thick, let's cut it in half so that we have like almost, we have a moon shape here to work with. Oh, beautiful way to give the idea of a piece of pipe laying down onto this plate that you're creating. It works great. So if you can use an entire log like I did with that little right angle piece, but you could come in, cut a larger piece in half so you get a moon shape, and then use that into your design. So from here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to let you guys watch my hands talk as I create my smaller pipes onto my plate piece. Okay, so now for me, the fun part. I started making these little larger pipes, and to tell you the truth, when I went into this project, I didn't know how it would turn out. I was like, this may or may not work, I don't know. But when I created that first right angle smaller pipe, I was like, wait a minute. What if you took that same kind of thing but put it on both ends? Yeah, that's what we're doing here. This particular piece, the red piece, was about a half of an inch in diameter, so it was pretty large, right? But I cut off both ends, and I made sure there was enough, you know, it was a pretty lengthy piece, and you'll adjust to like how long you might need. Eventually you'll just be like, okay, but right here I'm starting to curve it, and I'm making that right angle really on both ends. And bring your blade in to make sure it's even. Perfect way to make sure it's like, oh yeah, I don't have one end longer than the other. You got your blade right there to just kind of butt it up against, like it's a little handle. Make like a little door handle if you wish. So that's really what I was like, I love this. This is great, right? Oh my goodness. I was I was so excited at this point. I was like, oh my goodness, we're gonna have fun, you know. I know, like, hold yourself down there, Laura. Anyways, I also then brought in another piece of that clay, this red clay, if you will, and I I ran that through on a number 4 setting again on my Atlas pasta machine, and then placed that around both ends on this pipe. Now once I got that done, and you can make it, I tried to make it as flush as possible, and just again place it up against your blade to make sure it's even. It works great that way, but I then come in with my blade, cut off the little extra, and I've got that little cut mark, right? So you're always going to use that to your advantage. So what I did was I used either my X-Acto knife, or you can use your needle tool, whichever one, and create that little indent, and then place 2 little balls and flatten them, and then use either your plus or minus on your screwdrivers to make the indent on each of those little balls. It was perfect. I was like, yes, this is the look I'm looking for, yay! And so I was just so excited about this. I was so thrilled. At this point, I was like, yeah, I could see this coming together now, right? And when I did that, I then decided to take another, I want to say wider piece. It was probably about 1/4 of an inch. It really just depends upon how much you want to do, a little wider piece, if you will, onto this handle, and I placed it right on top, and I did that same kind of feature just like I did on the one end there. So that's what I started doing here. I thought this would be so fun. Oh, I just loved it. Once I got that first pipe done, I decided I wanted to do one more, and this one was going to be slightly different. This was about 1/2 of an inch, so actually that other one was probably thicker. It's probably more like 3/4. Anyway, this thing was a little bit longer, and it was a little bit smaller, but not too small. And I decided to take one ball of red clay here, and I pressed it flat, and I thought, let's take that and place the pipe right directly into the center. And I wanted to make sure that that flattened part really showed up well. And then I'll take another piece of that same red clay rolled out on a number 4 setting, create that same little piece of, you might say, connector material, if you will, on the end, and then cut that off, place a couple of my little bolts or whatever I want on the end, and then place that down into that circle piece. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because what happened was I wanted a second pipe kind of going in the same direction as the other one, but I had a difficulty because one of the pipes I had laid down on the original piece, well, it wasn't going to be level. So how do you do that? How do you deal with it? Well, my solution wound up being where I create the one end with the larger circle on the end and made my right angle. And then when I came around to the other side, I make my right angle again, but I don't add in any extra, thickening circle on the bottom. I'm going to leave that plain, and it's going to be off, so it's not going to be completely level. And that's exactly what I needed. So I just need to make sure one end is going to be a little shorter than the other end when you create that almost like horseshoe shape, but it's got that nice little angle on it. Anyway, once I get these particular, I want to say larger pipes created, I'm going to take both of those pipes and I'm going to bake them 275 degrees for about, mine, because they were thicker pipes, you're going to go longer in the oven. And because it doesn't matter what color the clay is, you can bake this really long. If you're really worried that it's not going to, you want to bake it thoroughly, make sure you put it in the oven. I had my two pipes go for about, I want to say a half hour. I wanted to really make sure they were completely thoroughly baked through. All right, so at this point, these other two pieces, my larger pipes, have been completely thoroughly baked, and I'm going to place them into my piece, and I love it. Look at that. And the one, because it was off just a little bit, this is where you place it down because I had that other pipe in the way. And to make sure it was level, just push down a little bit on the one side because my plate here has not been baked. So I can make that indent so it'll look like it'll conform to it naturally. It worked wonderful. I loved how this thing came together. I was like, yes, yes, yes. Very, very happy with it. What can I say? Okay, so now we're going to start creating a few gears, and this was another element I wanted to bring into my pipes and plates piece. I wanted to kind of have this be a transitioning from my second installment on my Steampunk, which was all on gears. So if you want to see how I created like the little molds here I did, go check out my gears video, and I'll put a link in my description box on that particular video so you can go ahead and watch that if you're like, okay, how did she make the gear thing? So right here I'm bringing in my liquid clay. I'm going to use my little paddle here to skim off the top of this, and it gets a little tricky in trying to get the extra clay off. I mean, I am going to get it on my hands. Make sure your baby wipes are right there close by so you can take care of that. But I'm taking it off my hands as much as possible and even off the mold as much as I can as well. Once I did this though, I was like, okay, not to leave the film on that particular mold. I came in eventually and I thought, okay, I'll use my baby wipe to help do this. It worked to a certain degree, but when I wanted to go in on like the little flat areas in between where I had the gear going on, and I wanted to make sure there was not really any clay there at all as a residue left over, I tried this. It worked, but it was kind of eh. The big thing that worked for me were Q-tips. Oh my goodness. So I had ordered some pointed Q-tips way back when, I can't remember when, but you could find them online, no problem. But they worked brilliantly. You just dab a little bit of water onto the Q-tip and just right over the top, right there, was able to bring up the little, it's just that little precision that you need to lift off any extra clay or any extra around the area where this particular mold was at. I loved it. It worked great. And when I went to go pop them out, worked brilliantly. So here I filled up a few of my little gear molds, and once I did this, I then baked those at 275 degrees, and I actually used my translucent clay. I was like, oh, okay, this is translucent. So you're gonna have to, and when you take them out of these molds, do so gently. These are fairly thin, but you don't wanna just go rip it right out and then it break all over the place for you. Just go gently when you lift it out. And then once you get those lifted out, bring in your piece where the clay here has not been baked. So the base part, the flattened part area, it's not been baked. And I'm bringing in these little tiny, I rolled out some more logs. I cut them flush at different sizes so that they would be different lengths. And this way then they could stand upright and you could place your gears on top of those. So you're only going to bring in a couple of gears. And if you really want to see more on that, check out that gear video one more time because I go into all of that with that there. You'll enjoy it. Anyways, once I was doing this, I was like, I want one more over by where the larger pipes were, right? Because I thought this could be kind of fun. You can do some different stuff, especially with the gears, right? I brought in one of my circle Kemper cutters and I cut down on that section, and this way then that little log that was standing upright could fit right there in that notch. And it was shorter than the open space underneath that pipe. So you could kind of see where my mind is going to be going with this. Yeah. Anyways, I just also want to mention here too, you'll notice the gears were black. Well, I went ahead and took some of my black matte acrylic paint and just painted them up black because I thought, okay, these little, I'm sorry, little translucent wheels, kind of hard to see, would be really nice if I could see them a little bit better. So that's what I had done to those, let them dry. And then this way you can play around with the design that I'm creating here. Now at this point, the plate part has not been baked, and I decided to bring in my little box of little metal pieces I like to use in my steampunk stuff. So I had some gears, I had some little nails, I had some little screws, I had some brads from my scrapbooking. So whatever you have, little metal pieces, they come in handy. And I thought, let's go ahead and place some of these in, make the indents where you need to make the indents on this steampunk piece so that when you get that in, you can go ahead and bake it. All right, so now we're going to start bringing in our metallic paints. But before we do that, this whole piece now has been completely baked through and through, 275 degrees, and I went about, 10 minutes on it. It wasn't as thick, but if you want to go a little longer, definitely do so. Anyways, before we start painting though, I got to take out all the metal pieces. I just needed to make sure I had the indents necessary for wherever I was going to place everything. And now that we've got that going on, I'm going to bring in my black matte acrylic paint, and we're just going to paint up the whole entire thing. Once I get this completely painted up, then we're going to let that dry a little bit and then come in with our metallics. And I'm going to be using my glam gold, my pure gold, my rose gold, my antique copper, my silver anniversary, and my gunmetal gray, and these are all folk art metallic paints. So once I get my three-dimensional pipes here all painted up in my black, I'm going to bring in my gunmetal gray, and we're going to start there on the very basic background. So the very underneath part, the one that's the lowest, the lowest area here, I'm going to go ahead and paint up the entire part of that all in gunmetal gray. We're going to take the plates and we'll do them in different, like the copper and the golds and that sort of thing. But I want to make sure the gunmetal would be the nice base part right all the way along here. It worked out great. I wasn't sure if that would be a good place to start. I was thinking, well, maybe I just keep with black, but I thought, no, let's have a little bit of fun. And I really liked the look of it. It seemed to work in well with the whole idea of metallic plates and the pipes. Now, once I have this gunmetal down, I'm going to then bring in my glam gold, and I decided to go ahead and start placing down a couple of plates, with this color. I just thought, let's go ahead and start with the antique gold type thing, or I should say the glam gold, and it worked out really good. From there, I just started bringing in my copper and everything else to start creating, or I should say, painting thoroughly this entire piece. I also then come in on those three-dimensional pipes, which you can't see here. Those things are going to be done up in the antique copper and in my silver. So right here, guys, I'm going to let you guys just watch my hands talk as I paint up all of my pipes and my plates. So I want to quickly mention here, when you're doing the little details on these plates and on the pipes themselves, like the little screw heads and stuff, whatever color you had used before as the main part, like say it was antique copper, make sure the little screws are either in silver or gold, but I prefer silver because it's more dynamic and you can really see them then. Just like the gold against the silver worked great. I tried gold against that rose gold there and it just didn't quite work, so I went back in and I did silver, because really when you think about it, just like polymer clay is a game of contrast. You want a nice light to a nice dark kind of complement. Well, the same applies here with your metallic paints. You'd rather have a silver against a gold. It just shows up better. Okay, so we're going to come in and we're going to start painting up our gears now. I have all of my different colors here that I wanted to use, and you can just randomly paint them up, or if you think one color would look better in one area on your little pipes and plates, pipes and plates picture piece that you're working on, then do so. But once you get all of these gears painted up completely, we're then going to come in with some gold chain that I had left over from some old jewelry, and we're going to bring in our three-dimensional pipes. And right here, yes, I know, I'm using my super glue. If you guys don't like to do that and you want to use liquid clay to adhere clay to clay, go ahead and do so. I totally understand. However, that being said, most of my plates here were completely painted over, so it really doesn't make that much difference in my mind. So, you can just do super glue. Besides, it's not jewelry. It's not going to be one of things where you have to have that. But place your three-dimensional pipes in, and then bring in your chain, and right around these, I want to say the logs that are standing upright, what you're going to do is you're going to bring in your chain, you're going to wrap it around one, and if you like the look of that, then go ahead, use a little super glue and adhere that into that particular log, okay? And then wrap that around, and then I come around to the next log, I connect it in, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna place those gears on top, right? You're gonna place the gears on top, so you wanna look like the gears are moving with that chain, right? The chain is gonna be moving around because it's rolling around as gears and chain do, right? I'm getting way off here. But glue it into where you like it the best. The thing that I liked about placing this chain into this particular pipes and plates feature was that I could take it underneath the three-dimensional pipes. And I had thought about it. I was thinking about, well, maybe I wrap it around the pipe, but I thought, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to go straight for that other little log, glue that into the feature, and then come into the other little log across the way and work it that way. I thought that would be really fun. So once I got that done though, I brought in my clay gears and I started placing them on top, and I thought, okay, let's place that in. And it looked okay, but I thought, let's bring in the little metal gears too and just kind of cap them off on top of the clay gears. It worked wonderfully. I love that. So if you could find some little metal gears, and I'm going to go again online, I'll see if I could try and find a link for some. So if you guys are like, oh, I need those metal gears, where do I get them? I'll put a link in the description area for you guys to find those. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just adding in those little metal gears on top and then placing them into the piece directly. Once I get those placed in, I get all the gears placed in, I then come in and I decide, okay, put the brads back in, put the little screws back in, do all those little pieces and get it finished up with the gears and the screws and the brads. Now, once I got those pieces in, the thing I found the most exciting when finishing up with this chain and everything was adding in, I had the two ends of the chain. What do you do with it? Well, for me, I brought in a couple of jump rings and I took a couple of my small, I added into the end of the chain, right? And then added in a gear to finish it off. So this way then when it would sit upright on my picture piece, it would just hang down gently with that gear dangling. Now I had to adjust this a little bit, but oh, I love that. That was like, okay, I like it, it's completed, it's yay. And I only had the two pieces. I did come back in a little bit later and I added in one more little piece of chain hanging off of one of the gears to complete it up. I like to have two, but 3 is a better number when you try to design, so that's what I did there. Now, for many of you, you're probably thinking, what is she going to do with these things? Well, I'm showing you here. That was the first installment. Remember when I did the belts? Okay, this is going to go into a larger picture frame, and I'm going to frame it up with, it's going to be 4 installments of all different kinds of steampunk features. So we had the belts, we have the gears, and now we're going to be bringing in the pipes and plates. And that's my 3rd installment that'll go down in the corner. And I'll probably finish it off with something in the center yet too. So it's going to be probably 2 more videos on this particular piece I'm putting or compiling together. We're looking at, and I'm not going to tell you what the 4th one is. That's going to be a surprise. But I'll do a 4th installment, and then once I get all 4 elements together, I'm going to come up with a compilation for the center, and that will be my 5th video that will be on this entire picture piece that I'm putting together. All right, so this is the end result of my pipes and plates steampunk piece. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please bop the like button, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I'm sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.